there's a quiet contradiction many introverts carry inside them. They feel drained after social interaction, sometimes even after being around people they genuinely like. Their energy seems to evaporate in crowded rooms, in long conversations, in environments filled with noise and movement. And yet, despite this exhaustion, they crave something profound, deep connection, emotional intimacy, meaningful conversation that reaches beneath the surface. To outsiders, this can look confusing. How can someone want closeness but also retreat from it? How can someone long for connection yet feel overwhelmed by the very situations where connection is supposed to happen? The answer lies in understanding that introversion is not about disliking people. It is about how the nervous system processes stimulation. Introverts tend to have a heightened sensitivity to external input. Sounds, facial expressions, emotional cues, shifts in tone, subtle social dynamics. Their brains often register more detail, more nuance, more emotional information. This heightened processing creates depth, insight, and empathy. But it also comes at a cost: mental and emotional fatigue. From a psychological perspective, many introverts grow up learning to observe before participating. They scan the room, they analyze, they feel. This pattern often begins early. A child who is naturally introspective may be labeled shy or quiet. They might be gently or sometimes forcefully encouraged to come out of their shell. Over time, they may internalize the belief that their natural pace is wrong, so they adapt. They learn scripts. They learn how to socialize on cue. They learn to perform extroversion when necessary. But performing drains energy. Because it is not instinctual, it is calculated. When an introvert leaves a social event feeling depleted, it is not necessarily because they disliked the people there. It is because they were processing everything, every micro-expression, every shift in emotional tone, every subtle tension in the room. Their mind does not skim, it dives, and diving requires oxygen. Yet here is the paradox. Introverts are often wired for depth. Small talk feels hollow because it hovers at the surface. It asks for performance without meaning. Deep conversation, however, the kind that explores fears, dreams, insecurities, philosophical questions, feels nourishing. It replaces stimulation with significance. It transforms interaction from performance into presence. This is why many introverts feel lonely in crowds but connected in one-on-one conversations. It's not the number of people that matters, it's the emotional bandwidth required and the authenticity available. There is also another layer to this experience: emotional safety. Because introverts tend to be sensitive processors, they are also sensitive to rejection, judgment, and emotional shifts. They often replay conversations afterward. They analyze what they said. They wonder if they spoke too much or too little. They notice when someone's tone changes slightly. This post-social reflection can amplify the exhaustion. It's not just the event itself, it's the mental review afterward. Many introverts develop a protective strategy in response to this sensitivity. They become selective. They limit exposure. They choose fewer relationships but invest deeply. From a psychological standpoint, this is a form of boundary setting. Though it may not always feel intentional, it's a way to manage overstimulation and preserve emotional energy. However, when this protective instinct becomes too rigid, it can morph into isolation. An introvert who has been misunderstood, criticized, or emotionally hurt may withdraw further. They might tell themselves they don't need anyone. They might convince themselves that solitude is safer, and while solitude can be restorative, prolonged emotional isolation can quietly erode well-being. Humans are relational beings. Even the most introverted nervous system is still wired for attachment. The craving for deep connection is not a contradiction. It is biology. We all seek to be seen, understood, and valued. For introverts, the key difference lies in how connection feels most natural. It thrives in quiet spaces, in intentional conversations, in environments where there is room to pause, to think, to breathe. There is also an important distinction between social energy and emotional fulfillment. An introvert may leave a party feeling drained, but leave a long, vulnerable conversation feeling full. Even if that conversation lasted hours, energy depletion is not always tied to time. It is tied to type of engagement. Many introverts struggle with guilt around this. They may feel broken for needing alone time. They may worry that their partners or friends will misinterpret their withdrawal as rejection. In relationships, this can create tension. A more extroverted partner might equate closeness with frequent interaction, shared social experiences, and constant communication. The introvert, on the other hand, may equate closeness with emotional depth and mutual understanding, even if interaction is less frequent. Without communication, this difference can lead to misunderstanding. The introvert may retreat further to protect their energy. The partner may pursue more intensely to feel reassured. This dynamic can create a push-pull cycle that feels confusing for both. Understanding this psychological pattern is crucial. When introverts recognize that their need for solitude is not avoidance but regulation, they can communicate it more clearly. And when others understand that withdrawal is not rejection but recharging, connection becomes less threatening. There is also a neurological explanation that adds clarity. Research suggests that introverts often have a more active prefrontal cortex, the region associated with internal reflection and decision-making. This means they naturally spend more time processing internally. They may replay interactions, anticipate outcomes, analyze emotional subtleties. This cognitive depth enhances insight but increases mental load. So when an introvert feels drained, it is not weakness. It is the cost of depth. Yet the longing for connection remains. And this longing is powerful. It pushes introverts to seek meaningful relationships. It pushes them to open up selectively. It drives them toward authenticity rather than quantity. The challenge arises when fear interferes with that longing, because deep connection requires vulnerability, and vulnerability requires risk. For someone who already feels easily overstimulated or emotionally sensitive, the risk of rejection can feel magnified. This is why many introverts take time to open up. They are not disinterested, they are assessing safety. They are observing consistency. They are evaluating emotional reliability. Once trust is established, however, they often become incredibly loyal, present, and deeply invested. In everyday life, this psychological pattern can manifest in subtle ways. An introvert may cancel plans at the last minute, not because they don't care, but because their energy feels depleted. They may hesitate to attend large gatherings, but eagerly accept a quiet dinner invitation. They may need silence after a long day of meetings. They may prefer texting over phone calls because it allows processing time. When misunderstood, these behaviors can be labeled as antisocial or distant, but when understood, they reveal a nervous system simply trying to stay balanced. Self-awareness becomes transformative here. When introverts learn to track their energy, they can plan accordingly, they can schedule rest after social events, they can communicate their needs without shame, they can choose environments that align with their temperament. It is also important to gently challenge the belief that being drained means avoiding growth. Sometimes introverts may overprotect their energy, avoiding experiences that could actually bring fulfillment. The key lies in intentional exposure, choosing meaningful engagement rather than reflexive withdrawal. Deep connection does not require constant social immersion. It requires courage in small doses. It requires saying yes to one meaningful conversation. It requires allowing someone to see behind the quiet exterior. It requires trusting that being sensitive is not a flaw but a strength. And here is something many introverts need to hear. Your craving for depth is not too much. It is not dramatic. It reflects your orientation toward meaning. You do not want noise, you want resonance. Healing begins when introverts stop judging their own rhythm, when they stop comparing their social capacity to others, when they accept that needing solitude does not cancel the desire for love. You are allowed to leave early. You are allowed to prefer one profound conversation over 10 casual ones. But you are also allowed to want connection deeply. Those two truths can coexist. When embraced rather than resisted, this paradox becomes a gift. It creates relationships built on authenticity. It fosters emotional intelligence. It nurtures empathy. The goal is not to become less introverted. The goal is to understand the system you operate within, to honor your energy, to communicate your needs, to take relational risks at a pace that feels sustainable. Connection does not require you to be louder. It requires you to be present. And presence is something introverts often excel at. If you recognize yourself in this feeling drained yet longing for something deeper, know that nothing is wrong with you. Your nervous system simply values depth over volume. Your heart seeks intimacy over intensity. And with self-compassion, boundaries, and intentional vulnerability, you can build a life where solitude restores you and connection fulfills you. Both can exist. Both are part of who you are.